Good evening, Midway families, and welcome to this week's edition of Tuesday Tales with Mr. Jackson. This week, I have an opportunity to share with you a very special book, Freedom School, Yes. Its author is Amy Littlesugar, and it is illustrated by Floyd Cooper. Join me as we read. On the first night the Freedom School teacher came to stay in Chicken Creek, a brick burst through the front room window of Jolie's house, shattering the stillness. Jolie heard it first, heard the hoots of laughter, then the squeal of tires down the lone road. Mama, Jolie's heart pounded. Mama. But Mama was already awake. Quietly she rose, so as not to waken Luann and little Sari. She ran to see if Annie was safe. 19-year-old Annie was the Freedom School teacher. She'd never taught school before, yet she'd come from up north to teach the children of Chicken Creek. Lord, child, Mama cried. Y'all all right? She hugged Annie like she'd never let go. Jolie went and picked up the brick. A note wrapped around it was scrawled with hate. Freedom School teacher, go home or else. Jolie, Mama said in a low voice, go get Uncle Shad, you hear? Jolie grabbed an old yellow bandana, tied it around her head, and ran down the lone road. She heard the night wind in the cotton, scratchety-scratch, scratchety-scratch, and soon she ran even faster. Soon she came to the Mount Pleasant Church. Jolie remembered the Sunday Mama raised her hand, offering to let a Freedom School teacher come and stay with them. Praise God, Reverend Wilkins cried, and Jolie wanted to push Mama's hand right down. No one else raised their hand, no one, just Mama. But the time Jolie got to Uncle Shad's, tears were streaming down her face. Why, sis, Uncle Shad exclaimed when he saw Jolie. You okay? Your mom, Luann, Sari? Oh, Uncle Shad, Jolie cried. Then she told him all that had happened, how she'd wished Annie'd never come, nor Freedom School neither. Uncle Shad leaned both his hands on his walking stick. Listen to me, sis, he said quietly. This here Freedom School ain't gonna be like no ordinary school. You're gonna learn about people and places, about who you are. Once you learn that, you ain't gonna let no being scared get in your way. Next day was Sunday, and Annie was to meet the entire congregation at Mount Pleasant Church, where Freedom School would be. I hope you all send your children tomorrow, said Annie, and some nodded slyly, pleased to know her, but others stayed away when she said, please, just call me Annie. Jolie knew that they weren't used to calling a white woman by her first name. Annie ought to have known that. That evening, Mama washed and ironed school clothes, and everyone, even Annie, got a tub bath out back. Stop fidgeting, Mama scolded as she braided Luann's hair, then Sari's, into a pinwheel of tiny braids. When it was Annie's turn, the girls oohed and awed. They'd never seen hair like that up close, so long, so straight. Bright as a flame, Mama braided it up good and tight. There, she said, now it's Jolie's turn. Jolie? But Jolie wanted no part in it. She'd gone to sit on the old crate step behind the orange trumpet vine. She looked up to the velvet sky and the stars she loved. One day, Jolie imagined, she'd count them all. She didn't need no Freedom School for that. Suddenly, though, a deep, bone-rattling sound crashed through Jolie's thoughts like thunder. Mama and Annie were on the porch at once. Fire, someone screamed. The church is on fire! For hours, the men and women of Chicken Creek, the young and the old, tried hard to save the burning church. But the hungry flames climbed higher and higher. And by dawn, it was hard to tell there'd even been a church where the charred and smoking frame now stood. Mama stood close to Annie and Jolie. Her voice sounded sad and empty. Guess there'll be no school tomorrow. Then Reverend Wilkins did a surprising thing. Reaching his hands out to anyone who'd take them, he began to sing, "If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning. If I had a hammer in the evening, all over this land, I'd hammer out my danger. I'd hammer out a warning. I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land." And slowly, one by one, all those around Jolie joined in. Church or no church, even Jolie knew there'd be freedom school tomorrow. It began under the shady branches of a hickory tree. Now, not a lot of children came. Some were too scared, but enough for Annie to get to know. Roland Dodd, who was near 15, all of the Christmas kids, and Althea and Essie, who were best friends. Jupiter Price was there, and he hated school. Even Miss Rosetta came, and she was 70. She brought a chair to set her old bones on and a coconut cake for Annie. Then on Tuesday, Reverend Wilkins brought good news. For $1, a neighbor sold them a small piece of land. In no time, they'd have a new church. And while we're at it, Reverend Wilkins said with a grin, a brand new freedom school. All the next day, axes and shovels flashed in the hot Chicken Creek sun. The temperature soared, but those who offered to build the church and the school never stopped working. Meanwhile, under the hickory tree, with bees buzzing and birds chirping, Annie's class was learning so much. Miss Rosetta said it made her head spin. Jolie's too. They learned about Jacob Lawrence, a Black American artist whose paintings like stories, and County Cullen, a poet who wrote the words like music. What is Africa to me? Copper sun or scarlet sea, jungle star or jungle track, strong bronzed me or regal black. Then Annie spoke of a free black man from long ago. Benjamin Banneker was his name, she said. He was a mathematician, a farmer, but more than anything, he loved the stars. And Jolie, twisting and twirling a blade of grass, listened and thought, did he ever count all the stars? She asked Annie that night. They sat on the front porch behind the orange trumpet vine. I don't know, Annie answered, but Jolie felt sure Benjamin Banneker had. By Saturday, the church had a new frame, and the school was almost done. Soon it had a roof that reached to the sky, sparkling new windows, and a shiny door opened wide. Before long, it'd be ready for Annie's class. But no chances were taken. Every night, someone took a turn guarding the new building. Annie wanted to, only Jolie looked fearful. Are you afraid for me? Annie asked. Jolie shook her head, but Annie knew different. She told Jolie about a woman from slavery days who risked her life helping hundreds get free. Her name was Harriet Tubman, Annie said. She was brave, brave as a lion. The days flew by. Jolie learned about people and places, just like Uncle Shad had said. Once even the Mississippi Caravan of Music showed up. Jolie learned who was Leadbelly and Big Bill Bronzy in Ragtime, Texas. The blues is in each of you, the guitar man sang. Finally, the school was almost done, and on one of the last days of the class under the hickory tree, Uncle Shad came. Pass this around for me, will you, sis, he asked Jolie. He handed her a fancy cigar box. It was Uncle Shad's silver medal. Carefully, Jolie showed it around. Even Jupiter Price craned his neck to see. Uncle Shad told the class there had been black heroes who'd fought for their country since America began. Men like Peter Salem and Crispus Attucks, the first black man to die for independence. Then Uncle Shad told how he'd been a soldier too and wounded his leg saving a man's life. A white man. Jolie sat very still, the metal warm in her hands. Uncle Shad went on. Now I ain't even allowed to sit beside one at a lunch counter. Isn't that something? He leaned both his hands on his walking stick. You all got to grow up and change that. That night, Annie took a turn guarding the school. I'll be fine, Annie smiled at Jolie. Tweaking one braid, tell your mama I'll be back by supper. By supper time came and went and the twilight settled in. Where is Annie, Mama worried. I'll find her, Mama said Jolie. No, you won't, child, Mama warned. Only Jolie didn't listen. When Mama's back was turned, she grabbed her old bandana. This time, she wouldn't let being scared get in her way. But shadows loomed ahead. Darkness came swirling fast. Jolie heard the night wind in the cotton. Scratchety scratch, scratchety scratch. She almost turned back. Then she heard something else, something she'd heard before. Hoots of laughter and the squeal of tires down the long road out of Chicken Creek. Jolie froze. Annie, the school. Jolie began to run down the road faster than she thought she could.